everybody and welcome back to the Traxion channel for another brand new video. It's been a while since we last made an Assetto Corsa Competizione track guide, over a year in fact, but now, finally, Kunos Simulazione have released some new circuits for us to try. Our first guide will probably be the one many of you are most keen for, Watkins Glen. I decided to jump in the Mercedes GT3 EVO as it was great fun to drive in my previous ACC video, and this run was done on hot lap mode using the aggressive default setup. There were a few minor changes, i.e. the brake pads from 2 to 1 and the tyre pressures increasing a little bit to accommodate the coolish temperatures that were sitting just below 20 degrees by the way for both track and ambient, so we have a nice and fast circuit to play with. You can definitely go quicker with some setup work and of course better driving, but a mid or low 43 is very much achievable with this default setup. So without further ado, let's get going. On the approach to turn 1, you want to be all the way over to the left. Hit the brakes hard just before you pass the 200 board, shifting down to third. This corner has excellent camber, so you really need to utilise that, getting the car rotated quickly and early with a sharp turn-in. Priority here is a good exit, so fully focus on that over being the last of the late brakers. On this particular lap, I did just miss my apex. Ideally, you want to put your car fully over the flat section of the yellow and red curbing on the inside, but not the raised section. This mistake cost me around about 1/10 of a second. Get the power down fully as you hit the apex and let the car run out nice and wide, way wider than you might actually expect. The track limits here are incredibly lenient, so as long as your right hand side tyres are still touching the curb at all, you are legal. It's then a flat out run up the hill through the S's, nothing challenging here, just a case of straight lining it as much as you can. Try to flow from one corner to the next, hugging the curbs but with no need to actually use them. This flat out section highlights exactly why the exit of turn 1 is so crucial. Stick to the left as you approach the inner loop, also known as bus stop, like pretty much every other chicane. I use the Marshal's Hut on the left as a braking reference, but on a longer race run, you might want to be a little bit more cautious through here. The chicane is all about rhythm and timing. You actually want to turn in fairly early to try and keep the car balanced, avoiding unwanted oversteer. On this lap, I shifted straight down to 4th before hitting the first curb, but on other laps, to keep the car a little bit more stable, I would stay in 5th for the first part, then grab 4th as I turned left. Use lots of curb on the inside right, before again hauling the car over to the left hand side curb for the second part. If you get this right and the car is balanced, you should easily be able to get back on the power and drive the car straight over the next 2 curbs as well, but the important thing here is to use the pedals to balance the car, not just the steering. In order to achieve this balance, I use a tiny touch of throttle as you can see between the first and second curbs, which settles everything and allows me to attack curbs 3 and 4 at full chat. Ideally, you do want to be a little further to the left on the third curb in order to straight line the exit, which sets you up nicely for the outer loop. This is probably where the largest chunk of time was lost on this particular lap, around about 2/10, all because of a little impatience on my end. That's a key word to bear in mind throughout a lap at Watkins Glen. Patience is super important, and never more so than through outer loop. Try and hold the lock on at a consistent level to keep the car balanced and alleviate understeer, using throttle modulation to rotate the car at the perfect point, around about midway through the corner. Aim to hit the inside curb, and the earlier you can get on the power, the better. Let the car run out wider than you might think. The camber really does help hold the car in place and keeps you within track limits as you shoot towards the exit. You can use all of the curb and a little bit more here, so don't waste it. Basically, you can really attack this exit more than you might think at first. Haul the car straight back over to the right for the downhill left-hander named Chute, another stunning corner but highly frustrating when you get it wrong. It's hard to spot a braking reference here, but there is a drain cover on your right if you're able to see it, ideally braking just before you pass it. Start turning as you brake, using the trail braking technique to bring the car in close to the curb. Unsure what trail braking is? Make sure you check out our trail braking guide to learn all about it. Hug the curb and be patient, much like the previous corner. When you reach the halfway mark and the car is gripping up, nail the throttle and open out your steering, letting the car run all the way out to the curb on the outside. On this lap I did have a tiny bit of a feather on the throttle as I exited the corner. Ideally you want to keep it fully planted so it's just a matter of patience. Shoot back to the left as you head towards the toe of the boot. If you're wondering why this full layout is known as the boot by the way, just look at the track map with the corner names and you'll probably work it out. Here you want to brake and start turning around about the 100 metre board. It's later than you think at first as the uphill braking zone really helps slow the car down nicely. Make sure you get tucked in and hug the curb, using the camber of the corner to hold the car on line. I like to use second gear here just to get that extra rotation at the midway point in the corner. Then, as early as possible, get back on the throttle. Just watch out for oversteer if you are using a lower gear. The safer option in the Merc might be staying in third, especially in a race run, but you will lose 1/10 of a second or so in the process. Let the car run all the way out and use the extra tarmac runoff area. The next one, called heel, is really tricky and highly frustrating. The corner tightens at the apex, and I find that if you focus fully on your exit, you don't really gain anything as you lose the time or more on entry. With a good setup and some great driving, you can find the perfect compromise, but I found it best to attack the entry, braking halfway between the 100 and 200 boards. If you can get the car rotated, aim to get the car as close to the curb as possible at the apex. The corner opens out more than you think, so get back on throttle early and let the car run out wide on exit. You can use all of the curb here and a little bit more, just make sure that your right hand wheels remain on that curb. Again, you can either use second or third here, but I found that second was a little too unstable and resulted in both a slow apex speed and oversteer on throttle. Third was a safer and ultimately faster option. Pull straight back to the right for the short dash uphill towards T9. I don't understand why it's not called ankle, but yeah well. Here, you want to brake and start turning just as you pass the last advertising board, and yes, I know boards are terrible things to use as reference points, as they can be moved or destroyed, but there's not a huge amount else to go off here. Once you get up to speed, you will naturally have an idea of the right spot to brake at. I turn in slightly late, aiming to shift down to second and get the car rotated about 1/3 of the way through the corner. If successful, you will be right on the inside curb and you can squeeze back on the throttle. It's very easy here, however, to oversteer on corner exit, especially with low traction control, so I find short shifting to third works well to maintain momentum and grip. A bit of seesawing may be required though. These last two corners are epic, but they can make or break your lap. Speaking of brakes, I stay off them for the left at turn 10. I just lift a little approaching the 100 board and turn the car towards the apex, holding fourth. Get close to the curb and nail the throttle early, opening up your steering and using all of the exit curb. Don't fully straighten up, keep the car moving back over to the left in order to prepare for turn 11. Here, I touch the brakes and downshift to third, just after the tyre wall ends and the Armco starts on the left hand side. Take a nice and early turn in, use the camber of the corner and as usual, get back on full throttle as early as possible, opening out your steering and using all of the road right up to the wall. I took a bit too much curb here which did delay me getting back on the power. Try to get close but don't mount it quite as early or as much as I did. Momentum is absolutely key, and if you've nailed it, that green number should be growing and growing on your relative timer as you power towards the line to end your lap at Watkins Glen. Now that we've had the analysis, I'm going to play you the lap at full speed so you can see how it all flows together. So there we have it. This lap was far from perfect. There was definitely a 43.5 in the sectors, and with a bit more track time I reckon a low 43 or maybe even high 42 is possible on the aggressive default setup. In terms of lap time targets, I would say the pros will be looking to get into the mid 142s in qualifying sessions, whilst a 148 is a great starting point for online racing, and a 153 is a nice benchmark to aim for if you're learning the ropes. Now just remember, these are quite simply made up targets to give you some motivation based on your experience level, so don't worry too much if you're struggling. If you work away on your lines and your technique, the lap time will follow eventually. Just before we wrap things up, here is my 10-second summary of Watkins Glen. Banking is your friend in turn 1, flat through the S's and balance through the inner loop. Patience through the outer loop, more patience down the chute. Don't be patient with toe or indeed heel. It's a shame they can't be heel and toe rather than toe and heel, but what can you do? Watch for oversteer through turn 9, brake through turn 10 and don't hit the wall through 11. Thanks as always for watching, and make sure you subscribe to the channel so that you don't miss any of our ACC content. I will be away this week, so there might be a bit of a wait for the rest of the track guides, but rest assured, COTA and Indy will be coming in the future, once I actually learn how to drive them myself. There will also hopefully be some setup guides for all of these circuits as well, so another reason to hit that subscribe button and of course hit the notification bell to catch the uploads as they are released. In the meantime, keep it pinned and have a great day.